So first year become second year become computer applications fourth semester 2 and 4 fourth semester programming object oriented programming in C++. Similarly, first year become BA, first year BA second semester, and first year BSc BZCA fourth semester second semester or something. మనకి ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఓరియంటెడ్ ప్రోగ్రామింగ్ ఇన్ C++ ఉంది. అదొక్కసారి మనము రివైజ్ చేద్దాం. సో what are the learning objectives means what is principles of object oriented programming objects, classes, data abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, dynamic binding, message passing, and examples of C++ programs. All these may cover. So how object oriented programs are evaluated means machine language from machine language assembly languages are formed, from that procedure programming languages and object oriented programming languages, and object oriented programming is developed. So this is the diagram which shows how object oriented programming languages are evolved or developed. So what are the different types of languages and how they are used means procedural languages, structural languages, object based languages, object oriented languages, and logical based languages, rule based languages, and database based query languages, like that. So procedural languages means like they may use some subroutines, procedures and functions like Algo, Fortran, Basic, COBOL. Structural languages means algorithms rather than the data, that is C and Pascal. And object based languages means support object creations, that is module 2. Object oriented languages means classes and objects like C++, Smalltalk, Eiffel and Java. Logical and rule based and visual based languages means Visual Basic, VB, C++, like that. And database query languages means SQL, like that. So procedural programming means divide a large program or application into some small functions and subroutines, and programs organized in the form of procedures and file data items in some pieces or small groups. As programs increase in complexity, management becomes difficult. Subroutines are abstracted to avoid operations, and hierarchical in nature, that is hierarchical means top to bottom approach. And all these are procedural languages. So advantages, what are the advantages of using procedural languages? So what are the advantages of using procedural language? Suitable for medium sized applications, minimize the duplication of data, reduce errors, saves time, money and space. And disadvantages, since global data is accessible to all functions, so the data can be easily corrupted. Difficulty to maintain and hence the program code, does not model the real world very well. So all these are disadvantages of using procedural languages. So objects based programming languages means languages that support programming with objects are said to be object based programming languages. Their features are data encapsulation, data hiding, and access mechanism, operators overloading, and function overloading. They do not support inheritance and dynamic binding. So next comes object oriented programming languages. Objects based features plus inheritance plus dynamic binding. It is called as object oriented programming languages. So object oriented programming. What is object? Object means data plus some methods. A collection of both data and methods is called as an object. Problem is divided into objects, data structure with data fields, methods and their interaction rather than functions. And it ties data more closely to the functions and does not allow it to flow freely around the system. That is data abstraction. Use bottom-up program technique for program designs. Objects communicated by sending messages to one another. New data and functions can be easily added whenever necessary. So it is called as inheritance. So there are many features, many important features are available in object oriented programming. So what is object oriented programming? Objects based features, that is data encapsulation, data hiding, access mechanism, operator overloading plus inheritance plus dynamic binding. And what is object? Objects means nothing but it is having some data along with some methods in it. The real world problem or a real world problem is divided into objects, that is data structure with data fields, methods and inheritances rather than functions. And use bottom up programming technique. Generally in procedural languages we may use top to bottom approach, whereas in object oriented programming we may use bottom up programming technique. Objects communicate by sending messages to one another. Generally in OOPS or object oriented programming languages, each object is communicated with each other and by sending and receiving some messages to one each other. Similarly, we can add new data items as well as functions and methods easily to the objects in object oriented programming. So what are the advantages? Increased programming productivity, reusable code, decreased maintenance code, greater speed, lesser complexities. Abstraction makes it possible to change the data structure of object without affecting the operation of the program. So advantages means increased programming productivity, and reusable code means we may use the same object or same code in many ways, in many other situations. Next one is that is called as reusable code. Decreased maintenance code. Maintenance code means maintenance and changes and additions and stuff, like maintenance of the code or maintenance of the programs means changes, additions, deletions are lesser. Greater speed means they are very speed in nature while comparing with the procedural languages. Lesser complexities means they are very easier to use, very easy to understand and easy to use. And abstraction makes it possible to change the data structure of an object without affecting the operation of the program. So abstraction, there are many other terms and terminologies are also used. We may discuss all these things. Next is structured versus object oriented program. So what are the differences between structured programming as well as so what are the differences between structured programming and object oriented programming? OOPS is centered around the concept of objects, encapsulation, abstract data types, inheritance, polymorphism, morphism and message based communication. So OOPS, object oriented programming concepts are objects, classes, objects, encapsulation, abstract data types, inheritance, polymorphism, message-based communications, like that. Object-oriented programming emphasizes on data rather than the algorithm. Here, data is encapsulated with the associated functions into an object. Generally, not only in అంటే ప్రొసీజర్ ఓరియంటెడ్ లాంగ్వేజెస్ కాకుండా కాకుండా మనకి ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ఓరియంటెడ్ లాంగ్వేజెస్ అనేవి డేటాకే మనకి కాన్సన్ట్రేట్ చేస్తాయి, డేటా మీదే కాన్సన్ట్రేట్ చేస్తాయి, నాట్ ఆన్ కోడ్ ఆర్ లాజిక్. కోడ్ లేదా లాజిక్ మీద చేయకుండా ఓన్లీ డేటా మీదే మనకి మోర్ కాన్సన్ట్రేషన్ అనేది ఉంటుంది అనమాట. సో object-based programming usually refers to objects with inheritance and hence without polymorphism, and object-oriented means data abstraction plus object types plus type inheritance, or object-oriented means classes and objects plus inheritance plus communication with messages. So generally object-oriented based means all classes, objects, methods plus inheritance plus communication with the messages. So features of OOPS or OOPS object oriented programming languages. So what are the different features of object oriented programming languages or OOPS? Means there are many object oriented programming or OOPS languages are there, like C++, Java, like that, Perl, Python, like that. So the main any OOPS language may contain classes, data abstraction, encapsulation, information hiding, inheritance and polymorphism. Classes and objects, data abstraction, encapsulation, information hiding and inheritance and polymorphism. So history, this is about history of C++. So what are the main differences between C and C++? C and C++ differences enti? So C follows structured programming while C++ is object oriented. C is a structured programming language while C++ is object oriented. C does not provide data abstraction, hence data is not secure. C++ provides data abstraction. So in C there is no concept of data abstraction. Next is C is mainly a function driven while C++ is object driven. So another advantage, another difference is another difference is C does not provide C is mainly function driven while C++ is object oriented driven. C is only function driven and while C++ is object driven. C++ supports function overloading while C does not. C++ supports function overloading whereas C does not support function and operator overloading. C does not use namespaces to avoid a names collection while C++ does. Next, standard input output differs in C and C++, means the input output statements are also have different syntaxes in both C and C++. C++ allows use of reference variables while C does not. C++ supports exception handling while C does not. C++ is a superset of C, earlier called C with classes. Classes and inheritances are major additions to C++, and C programs can be compiled in C++ compiler. So these are the main differences between C and C++. So classes and inheritances are major additions to C++, where C doesn't have classes and అంటే మనకి సిలో క్లాసెస్ ఇన్హెరిటెన్సెస్ ఇవేవి కాన్సెప్ట్స్ ఉండవు, C++లో ఉంటాయి. అలాగే C++లో మనకి ఎక్సెప్షన్ హ్యాండ్లింగ్ C++లో మనకి ఎక్సెప్షన్ హ్యాండ్లింగ్ అనే కాన్సెప్ట్ ఉంటుంది. సిలో మనకి అది ఉండదు. సిలో మనకి ఉండదు. అలాగే ఇన్పుట్ అవుట్పుట్ డివైజెస్లో రెండిటికి మధ్య ఇన్పుట్ అవుట్పుట్ డివైజెస్కి మనకి లో కూడా మనకి ఇన్పుట్ అవుట్పుట్ ఆపరేషన్స్లో కూడా మనకి డిఫరెన్స్ ఉంటుంది సికి C++కి. So these are the main important differences between C and C++. So what are the differences between C and C++? C is a structured programming language, while C++ is a object-oriented programming language. C does not provide data abstraction, while C++ provides data abstraction. So these are the main differences between C and C++. C and C++. Okay. So what is the next we discuss about what is the structure of C++ program, means how to write, how to compile, how the C++ programs are written, like that. So C programs use the extension .c and C++ program uses the extension .cpp. The C++ compiler uses the file extension to determine what type of program it is compiling using C++. So comments, first is / means comments, hash include iostream.h, void main bracket open, cout less than hello world bracket close. So this is another example. Hash include iostream, hash include string, int main, some cout, string first name, cin, cout, like this. Cin and cout are basic standard input output functions. Cin and cout are basic standard input output functions. So another part is hash include iostream. Iostream.h is the standard input output string. iostream.h is the input output stream, standard input output stream, which contains all the input output functions, which contains all the input output functions which are defined in iostream.h. cout and cin. Cin is the standard input function, cin is the standard input function, whereas cout is the standard output function. Comments. So how to use comments in C++? We may use / for comment section. So variables and constants, data types, like that.